I'm not sure I can pinpoint the exact moment that I felt like I could call myself a runner. I sometimes say I've always been a runner, and I feel like I've always been a runner, although I know I didn't actually start running until I was in my late 20s. It might have been when I got my first race medal. It might have been when I started running every day during the lockdown times. I'm not exactly sure, but what I do know is that I woke up one day and I looked forward to going for my run. You're listening to What Do I Do Now Then, the podcast that explores the feeling of knowing that something needs to change, but not knowing exactly what or how. I'm your host, Laura, a former corporate serf who completed an Ironman, quit the 9-to-5 and is right now on a journey of transformation. Come along with me while I talk you through the events that brought me here, and we'll navigate the messy middle bit together. If you've ever thought about making a big change but felt fear holding you back, this is for you. I'm here to hold your hand. We jump together on 3, 2, 1, let's go. Let me tell you how it started. In about 2007, I'd been asked to join the team in a charity event that was about 30 miles of mountain biking from Fort William to somewhere in the Highlands, and then from there to Inverness, hiking. And I did that event twice. The first time it was terrifying and really a hard slog. I wasn't well trained. And at one point I was even sitting on the ground crying for my mum. But by the time I went back the next year and did the event again, I was so much stronger. Even though I fell off my bike, there were no tears. To train for that event, I had joined a military-style boot camp class, and I went every week. I loved it. We'd go out in every weather. There wasn't any kind of weather that would cancel the class. They had 3 groups for various fitness levels in this class. Blue was the entry level, where everyone started. But I knew loads of people who actually just happily stayed in that group because they came. Most people would move within a few weeks up to the red group. And then the top, as far as I was concerned, elite group were the greens. By the time I'd been there for a year or so, I'd quite often not encouraged by the instructors to join the greens because I was as strong as any of them. I could complete a higher number of the reps of all of the exercises that we were given. The greens were the kind of people who ran half marathons, might even be training for a marathon. And back then, before Strava, before social media, you might have known a couple of people who had done a marathon once. Or maybe that's still the case, and I just think that everybody runs marathons. But I never really enjoyed the running parts of that class, and I still felt like running was for other people. Where the office was next to a little man-made lake, and at lunchtimes I used to go for a run around the lake. I think that was the first time that I looked forward to going out to run, especially if the sun was shining. I'd started doing obstacle races by then, encouraged by the boot camp classes. And having found I actually quite like rolling around on the ground and jumping up and down, clambering under cargo nets and splashing through the rivers. That was my entry into trail running, and I didn't even realise at the time, because it's all so unserious. One of the first races I did was a nighttime race called the Mighty Deer Stalker. Everybody would dress up in their tweeds on the start line, and then later on the course would be littered with jackets and Sherlock Holmes hats that had been chucked as soon as the runners hit the first hill. I did that race a few times, and I remember there was a longer version, and I'd gone there with a team from the bootcamp class. When I couldn't find them when I got to the finish line, and I thought that I had been abandoned by the team, it did never occur to me that I'd actually finished before them. I went on to do some other obstacle races, including the Tough Mudder, mostly because I wanted the orange headband that they give you as a medal for the event. But once was enough with that. I didn't like the ice bath. I didn't like the electric shocks, and I didn't like that they make your friends pay for a spectator ticket. That's greedy. When I came to London in 2014, a group called Our Parks had just been established, and I started going to some free classes where I lived. That timetable got me back into yoga, which I had always loved, but I'd stopped running again by then, and it would be another 2 years until I discovered it. In 2016, I signed up for my first half marathon. The plan for that one was to run as a group. there were 5 of us in the group chat, but the commitment was first of all to wine and good times. So the girls dropped off one by one until only me and Gemma appeared on the start line. We weren't running fast. We just plodded along, we jogged on, we enjoyed the music, we enjoyed the sights, the signs, we took pictures, we were dancing, we drank as much water as we could get our hands on. And we still finished in what I think is a really respectable time for your first half marathon. I think it was about 2 hours and 20 minutes. I was so pleased, but I still didn't call myself a runner. When I started running for its own sake in 2012, it was an escape. And I felt when I was running then, I only had to concentrate on where I was going, listening to my emo playlist on the iPod Nano. If I'd been 10 years younger, I would have been a scene kid, I think. My inner teenager screamed along with the lyrics to every Fall Out Boy album anyway. I always loved the end of a race or running downhill. I'd feel like I was wearing someone else's legs and just hanging on for my life. After that first half marathon, I ran more half marathons. I don't know how many. Enough then that I stopped feeling nervous on the morning of the event. I was just excited to get going. I especially loved the races that were in central London, past all of the sights of the city. In early 2020, I went to Paris to run a half marathon there with sights of another iconic city. But of course, there was no race. And when we came back, within weeks, the world was in lockdown. Prior to that, I had been cycling to work. So when the order came to work from home, I just continued to do that. And I would cycle into central London completely empty and then turn around and go home again and start working. But one day, for a change, I went to run in the local park, and to my absolute horror, I found that running was difficult again. I got out of breath within minutes. So I resolved that I would start running every day until it started to feel easy. And although I had applied to run London Marathon every year for the last, I'd always been relieved to get the rejection email. But on my 39th birthday, I made a list of 40 things I wanted to do before I reached 40. And I remember writing train for a marathon on the list because I didn't think I'd be able to train and run the marathon within the same year. But the idea was there, and the identity of a runner had somehow started to form and become so entrenched then that I did believe that I could run a marathon. Anyway, most of the races were cancelled or postponed in 2020 and 21. So it was 2022 when I finally had the chance to start my first ever marathon. I'm not really sure why I thought I would finish it in 4 hours when I hadn't followed any kind of training plan. But I've given myself 3 objectives for the day. The first was to survive the day. I was determined that I would live through the race, even if that meant not finishing the race. Objective number 2 was to finish the race. Suppose I don't die, wouldn't it be nice to complete the event, however long it takes? Objective 3, let's suppose that I've survived and finished the race, was to finish under 4 hours. But I really didn't have any idea how fast I would need to run and for how to be able to finish a marathon in 4 hours. So needless to say, without having done any specific training, that did not happen. And there was a point in that race where I had lost a few minutes on where I needed to be. I'd slowed down to a walk, and I was calculating to myself, what is my finish time if I just walk for the next 6 miles? So the 4-hour plan was gone, and I could have felt upset about that, and I could have felt like I failed. But it really didn't matter to me then, because the first objective was to live through the day, and I knew that I would. And the second objective was to finish the race, and I knew that I would, and I did. I was so overjoyed that I had finished a marathon. I could say I'm a marathoner. And as a percentage of the population, there really aren't that many people who can say that. So now I did feel like a runner. Why I run has changed over the years. I'm not running away anymore like I was in 2012 and 2016, and maybe in some ways in 2020. Now I'm running towards the communities that I've found through running. I'm running towards strength. I'm running towards mental and emotional resilience. I'm running towards the next goal. And as I'm recording this, I'm just about to run my first 100-kilometre ultramarathon. Sometimes people marvel at the distances that I run on a normal training weekend, and they'll say, oh, I could never. But I could never do those things until I did. And I discovered then that the joy of running isn't in the red-faced, sweaty, aching legs, heart-pounding agony of the moment. It's in the "oh, look what I did" moments afterwards. It's when you look back and you see how far you've come and the realization that you've just achieved something that you once said, "I could never." There's a resilience that quietly builds inside you during every run, especially the runs that you don't want to do. Sometimes the why is made out to be a trope, but it's actually really important to understand your own motivation. When you feel great, you feel excited to go out and train. The world is made of roses, the sun is shining, the sky is blue. But the why comes in when it's windy and raining and you just want to stay at home and eat biscuits. The why is what makes you put on your waterproof jacket and go and run in the rain. For this year's training goals for me, which are to complete as many ultramarathons as I can logistically manage, I've hired a running coach. I've been working with my coach since the start of the year, and I've really seen my running strength improve way beyond my expectations. But part of my why this year is that I want to make a new career in the running and wellness industry. My entire career since the age of 17 was in financial services. So I found it difficult to translate my experience and skills away from pensions and into fitness. So the why is what keeps me motivated to achieving the next goal. Whether you're a runner or not, why you do what you do is really personal for everyone, and it will change over time. Sometimes I long for the days before social media and Strava, when running was just running. And even if you knew other people who ran, you didn't have access to the minutiae of data on it. There was no compulsion to compare yourself, usually unfavourably, to other people whose training goals and probably every other aspect of their lives would be completely different to yours. I know some people who don't record their runs on Strava. That is completely unhinged behaviour, in my opinion. But I wish I was that unbothered. Strava can be quite unhelpful because you compare yourself to other people. You've got no idea what they're doing. You've got no idea what their training goals are, what their responsibilities outside of that are, how much time they've got to dedicate to it, where they started, what their mindset is. You only know yourself. So although I love Strava to be able to see what routes other people are running, I have found myself at certain points looking at other people's runs and seeing what their average speed is and thinking, why am I not running that fast? Comparison is the topic of one of my favourite running podcasts at the moment. It's called Running Won't Save You, and you should definitely listen to it if you're a person who compares yourself to other people and you find yourself lacking. I find it really interesting, and it's just really warm and witty, and it's a bit like listening to your friends having a chat about. Everyone's why is their own, and it's your why for that particular event. It's your why for that challenge. That those things change over time. Like, when I think back to when I started running, and for a lot of it, it was for a sense of community. It was for a sense to not to feel alone. And in some ways, sometimes it was to run away from myself. It was to spend time not inside my own head. So the why changes over time. But for me, it's to know if I can do it. And then I just do it. Whatever your reason why is, you need to understand what it is. Are you doing it because you want to prove someone wrong? Are you doing it because you want to show someone else what is possible? You want to set a good example for the children in your life or the other women in your life. You want to show people if you can do it, they can do it. Maybe your why is you want to win the race so you can get the prize money. Maybe your why is you want to show yourself that you've recovered from an injury or, any kind of life event that's maybe knocked down your confidence. Why not? I signed up for the Ironman because the training plan for the half Ironman was almost the same as the training plan for the full Ironman. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do all that training anyway, why not? That's my why. My why is, while I'm here in my relatively young and able body, I'm going to do all of the things just to see if I can do them. Maybe one day I'll realise that there's something I can't do, but that's not happened yet. So I'm not going to stop. Taking on challenges, and let me go back actually. So the reason I started running was because I needed to be fit to take on the challenges that I had committed to. Now, one of the things that you don't realise while it's happening is that every time you go to the challenge, every time you complete the event, and even when you don't complete the event, little by little build these little bricks up of resilience through the perseverance, through continuing to do the thing when it's hard. It starts to slowly become less hard. It starts to slowly become less of a grind. It starts to, and wait for this, it starts to become enjoyable. So through doing all of those things, okay, let's go back in time. The Maggie's challenge, when I sat down on the ground and cried for my mum and I wanted someone to just make it be over. The only way to get over was to go through. The second year when I went back, I didn't sit on the ground. I didn't cry for my mum. Not to say it wasn't difficult, it still was hard. But between one year and the next, something had changed. And it's a mental strength that you build through doing these things that are hard in the beginning. You build physical strength too, obviously. You're doing the thing. But it's the challenge aspect of it. Your determination to show up, to persevere, and to just fucking get the thing done. It's what changed me inside myself. Now I've come through those challenges and built that resilience, I feel like I look forward to the challenge. I get excited about the challenge. I do these things because I need to see if I can. So that's my message on resilience, okay? You're going to decide for yourself what you're going to do. Whether you think you're ready to do it or not ready to do it, you decide that you're going to do it. There might be times when you sit on the floor and cry. That's all right. But you fall down 7 times, you get up 8 times and carry on. There have been loads of times when I thought that running was like therapy, and I might have even described it as being my therapy. When I said that, it's possible that I wasn't actually in very good mental health. If you have a mental illness, then running is really just you pretending that everything is fine. Don't get me wrong, running can help. And when I've felt the need to feel like I'm in my body and not in my head, to slow down my anxious thoughts, then it really did help me in the moment. But it didn't fix any of the issues. It doesn't fix any of the issues. Real professional therapy and time were the things that healed me. And in the meantime, I ran anyway. I think it's really important, though, to say that if you feel anxious, if you feel depressed, if you feel overwhelmed and stressed, those things can't be fixed just by going outside and running. They might be soothed in the short term. If you have a mental illness that requires medication, you absolutely must take that. Please don't replace that with running. That is not a good idea. And talk to someone. Please tell someone. The biggest change that happened for me when I went through a period of anxiety and depression was I told someone how I was feeling, and they helped me. And I didn't even know that help was there. I didn't know that I could be helped. Okay. There are 3 things that I hope you can take away from this episode. Number 1, everyone's journey is their own. Your journey is your own. You don't have to follow what other people are doing. You don't have to run a marathon because your next door neighbour is running a marathon. You don't have to run at a certain pace because your friend runs at that pace, or your person from work climbed that hill. You don't have to climb that hill. Climb your own hill. Number 2, your why will change over time. Our lives change, we change as people, and we gain experiences, and we become different versions of ourselves through the years. And we overcome challenges, and people move in and out of our lives until our motivations change. Our why changes. 3, it's okay to run to support your mental health, but you must not replace your therapy, your medication, your support network with running. That can be very dangerous and unhelpful. I'd love to know, if you're a runner, when did it first matter to you? When did you have the first moment of, I need to go for a run now? I'd love to know what changed in your life because of running. And when did you feel grateful to have the ability, to have the community? Tell me what it is that gets you out the door for the runs that you don't want to do. We all have those days. For me, it's the procrastination. I am the procrastination queen. My house is never so tidy as when I'm scheduled to go for a long run. I will fold those clothes, I will wash those dishes, I'll just sweep the patio and wash the windows too. You can send me a voice note on Instagram at Laura Goes to London, or at whatdoidonowthenpod, or you can message me on either of those 2 accounts. I'll put links in the show notes for this. If you're not a runner, thanks for listening anyway. I'd still love to know what it is that motivates you to do what you do. Maybe you're a cyclist, a swimmer, a crossfitter, a shot putter. The why still applies. Maybe I'll create a community episode where I can share some of your whys and other stories if you feel inspired to share them with me. Maybe those stories would help someone else discover their why. Thank you for listening this far. This is the first podcast I've ever made, and I hope it will be the beginning of something that inspires other people to take on new challenges and to feel a sense of community and belonging in running spaces. If you enjoyed this show, I'd be really grateful if you could give the episode a thumbs up in whichever app you use to listen. That would help the podcast to show up for more listeners. And if you've listened to this podcast and you've got some thoughts about it, some suggestions for topics that you want to hear me talk about, or for any feedback on the episode, I would love to hear them. You can send me a voice note on Instagram at Laura Goes to London, or at whatdoidonowthenpod, or you can message me on either of those accounts, and I'll put links in the show notes. Next time I'll be talking about how training for Ironman led me to quit my job and dream of a career in the running industry. Make sure you don't miss that by hitting subscribe on the podcast series wherever you listened. Until then, take care, enjoy your runs, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.